Welcome back, everyone. How are you all doing today? How are your holidays? I hope you all had a wonderful set of holidays and New Year's. And as for today's video, we're going into the long-awaited video on Killer Entitlement. So what exactly is Killer Entitlement? Well, unlike Survivor Entitlement, which typically manifests itself on the internet in the forms of ravings and tantrums, which can be seen on Twitter or in the forums, Killer Entitlement is something that we see and everyone in a trial experiences in the actual trial, which arguably makes it much more problematic than Survivor Entitlement. Killer entitlement is typically manifested in the forms of camping, tunneling, and slugging. This behavior comes about when a killer player already feels entitled to winning and thus engages in low skill and low effort behavior intended to skew a trial in their favor, in opposition to playing to the best of their ability in the spirit of sportsmanship and competition. After all, why win on your own merits when you could play dirty instead, winning only because you deny others the ability to play against you at all? But that's just it. To an entitled player, a win is a win regardless of how you achieve it. And each win achieved through entitled means is thus relied on by the player to then reinforce and justify both their entitled feelings and entitled behavior in future trials. Essentially, because I won then, I am therefore entitled to win now. While camping and tunneling typically present premeditated entitled behavior, slugging is generally employed as an afterthought. For example, when a killer camps a survivor to death and then rushes out to slug the remaining 3 survivors because in the process of chasing then camping, the other survivors popped 4 generators. This is quite literally the killer punishing the other survivors for not handing the killer an easy win they didn't earn. Then there is slugging to get the 4 kill. Yes, this is by definition entitled behavior. The hatch mechanic exists for the sole purpose of allowing for there to be a final survivor, a trope common to many classic slashers, which DBD is based on. When a killer slugs the second to last remaining survivor, they do so with the intention of stopping a normal part of the game's function from occurring, so as to not give the last remaining survivor the opportunity to escape that is duly owed to them by the game's intended mechanics. This is not just a form of entitlement, but it's also a clear exploit of the game's mechanics as a means of securing a 4 kill that again is not earned by the killer. Playing well and killing 3 survivors does not, ergo, mean a killer is entitled to the 4th kill. However, the sentiment behind this widespread entitled behavior is not entirely a killer player's fault. While it's true that entitled players have existed since the beginning of gaming, Dead by Daylight seems to foster a sense of entitlement among its players more than arguably any other game. A couple weeks ago I touched on this topic in my video, How Swift is Ruining Dead by Daylight. Link in the description below. In brief, Survive with Friends plays a big hand in widespread entitled behavior among killer players and content creators. This is because, contrary to a popular misconception, Dead by Daylight is not a 4v1 game. Each player wins or loses on their own merit, not as a team. So when the killer kills 3 survivors and 1 escapes, the 3 dead survivors don't win, and the one who escaped doesn't lose. And the killer doesn't lose for failing to kill all the survivors. That said, Swift changes the very nature in which survivors play DBD. Their efficiency increases drastically, information sharing over comms gives them buffed versions of at least 6 different perks each. They're able to coordinate with each other in ways that solos are just not able to do, and they can coordinate perk builds to create abusive combos around perks intended to help individual survivors who are trying to survive not just against the killer, but also against other survivors. This puts an immense amount of pressure on killer players to perform and ends up frustrating players because of all the unfairness that can be seen and felt in each trial because of Survive with Friends. I myself have fallen victim to this frustration from time to time. It doesn't make it right, but sometimes that behavior could just be driven by a long night of unfair matches against Swifts, especially if those Swifts are toxic. While this does not excuse or justify killer entitlement, it's important for us to have empathy when considering the motivations of a killer player. That said, outside of achievements, challenges requiring 4 kills, and survivors BMing the killer, there simply is no excuse for slugging for a 4K. At this point, the killer is just taking the game hostage to force a 4 kill, and frankly there should be zero exception for this sort of behavior. I've seen trials literally double or triple in length just because some petulant killer felt they were entitled to 4 kills after camping and tunneling all throughout the trial. What's worse is that I've seen killers waiting on the hatch to close it the moment they spot the last remaining survivor. Again, taking the game hostage for an easy 4th kill they didn't earn. I know that I just said that we should be empathetic, but fuck those guys. That's just straight up a douche move. For those of you who don't understand why this behavior is so bad, ask any Dead by Daylight veterans about the hatch standoff. Don't worry, I'll wait. And while we're waiting for those guys, waiting at the hatch for survivors to show up for an easy kill is just needlessly bringing back the hatch standoff, albeit with a different twist. For those of you who don't know, killers used to not be able to close the hatch, but they could grab survivors much in the same way that they could grab a vaulting survivor. So what used to happen is, if the killer found the hatch before the last survivor did, they would just wait on the hatch and try to grab the survivor if they went for the escape. And because hitting a survivor, even with an insta-down, would result in the survivor escaping, well, this is where we get the hatch standoff. Both parties, the killer and the survivor, would just sit there and do nothing. The survivor couldn't jump into the hatch, or else he would have been grabbed. And the killer can't hit the survivor, even with save the best for last, and even if it ends up in a down, because the survivor will just get away. This could go on sometimes for hours if neither player was willing to budge. And if the survivor ran off to finish gens, the killer would just follow them and down them away from the hatch. So both players, again, would just sit there at the hatch, doing nothing until one player simply gave up and either allowed the survivor to escape or allowed the killer to kill them. As a result of this, and years of killer players complaining about how they felt it was unfair for the last survivor, especially in a SWIF, to essentially have a free escape, the devs made the decision to allow the killers to close the hatch. But they also took away the ability to grab survivors as a means of preventing the hatch standoff. So yeah, killers who sit on the hatch waiting to close it right in front of the survivor for an easy kill are just being entitled and holding the game hostage. There is no excuse for bringing back one of the worst aspects of DBD history. Killers, if you find the hatch, don't be an entitled prick. Just close the damn thing and get on with the game. If you get the kill, you get the kill. If you don't get the kill, you don't get the kill. Just get over it. You're not entitled to a 4th kill just because you killed 3 other players. That's not how this game works. In the words of Monty Python, just shut the hatch and
get on with it. Yes, get on with it!
Now, don't get me wrong, the devs at Behavior aren't innocent in this mess either. While it's true entitled players would exist regardless of Behavior's mistakes, Behavior has also done nothing to help the issue. Their first mistake was in adding Swift without making any other changes to the base game. Swift completely changed the way people saw the game and were playing the game, and this led to killers feeling entitled to all 4 kills for playing well against a 4-man team of coordinated survivors. The second mistake is putting control over the start of endgame collapse in the hands of survivors after they finish the generators. The third mistake was putting full control of the hatch in the hands of the killer. The hatch and endgame collapse are 2 mechanics that strongly favor the side who should have the least amount of control over them, and these are simple fixes. For endgame collapse, add a minute on the clock and have it trigger the moment the last generator is completed. This way, survivors are compelled to leave instead of collectively hook trading and holding the game hostage so as to try and force a 4-man escape. For the hatch, make it so the hatch appears as soon as the second to last survivor is put into the dying state for any reason. Killer is no longer allowed to close it and still can't grab survivors. This will compel killers to hook and or kill their down survivor, or else risk 2 survivors escaping for being greedy. Another big way that Behavior has not helped the issue of player entitlement is by placing too much pressure on killers in general. Even before this proposed update, killers at iridescent grade or rank were required to get 3 kills to pip or win and 4 kills to double pip. Mind you, This is in a game where the devs boast balancing killers around getting only 2 kills. This of course makes no logical sense. If you're always balancing players around losing or a draw, of course players are going to feel entitled to a win. That's just human nature. If the devs lower the threshold for what constitutes a win for killer to 2 kills for a win and pip and 3 kills for a double pip, they will take so much pressure off killer players. In addition to making killer less stressful, they will also open players to freely experimenting with other killers and also having more fun with varying perk builds, therefore allowing killers to feel less dependent on sweaty meta builds and allowing them to be more open to playing in a manner that is generally more fun for everyone. Of course, there will still be entitled players on both sides, playing in the most entitled ways possible. But here, I've just made 3 big suggestions that would alleviate these problems by not placing killer players into a position where they feel the need to play in entitled ways in order to win in a casual PvP. I firmly believe these simple changes would go a long way to helping the issue from the developer side of the problem. That said, this is a problem of awareness as much as it is a problem of empathy. Players on both sides need to take a step back and start playing this game like we used to play PvP games before the age of Halo. At the risk of dating myself here, back in those days, you had to play with some consideration of how your opponents felt because they were sitting right next to you. In those times, if you played like a douchebag, you often didn't have anyone who wanted to play with you. Or any friends for that matter. Which brings me to the final issue. The mentality of, how dare you tell me how to have fun in a game that I paid for? In a match against someone else who also paid for the game so they could have fun. You see what's going on here? That mentality is in and of itself a self-contradiction, in addition to just being the most childish form of entitlement in the community. And never mind the community, just in gaming in general. It's the same as those people who say, why are you getting so upset about teabagging? It's just an animation. As if no one else has ever played Halo or Call of Duty or Medal of Honor, Battlefield, or any of those other games, because the list goes on. What's worse is these childish mentalities are openly espoused by the likes of True Talent and other big content creators. It's your money, you paid for it. Who should tell you how to have fun with it? These sentiments exist in a complete void of empathy. Ironically, something that True and the like also say is really needed in the Dead by Daylight community. The big thing I take issue with about people who espouse these beliefs, besides it being completely hypocritical, is that when it happens to them they become salty or otherwise toxic, and then even more entitled about how others should be treating them. This is a community issue that, as I said before, requires both awareness and empathy to counter, and you can't look to others to start being more empathetic towards you first. It requires you, yes, you, to first be empathetic towards others, and aware of your own actions and sentiments. Dead by Daylight is in a bad place right now, and it starts with us, the players, to fix it, and also for the devs to reinforce a more casual atmosphere for all players. Now, I want to thank everyone so much for watching this video, and yes, I want to just put out there as a final disclaimer, I am aware that there are a variety of situations in which camping, tunneling, and slugging are not entirely acts of entitled behavior. Moreover, I also fully understand that not every instance of camping, tunneling, and slugging is even brought on completely by the killer's own fault themselves. There are plenty of situations where survivors do this, and yes, it does happen. There is a such thing as survivor-induced camping or survivor-induced tunneling and slugging. It does happen. We weren't exhaustive on all situations, so as much as we're open to discussion, just be aware of that before you decide to post down various situations in the comments on when camping, tunneling, and slugging are not acts of entitlement. But enough of that. This video has gone on quite long enough. I think I've prattled on enough as is. And again, I'm going to thank you for being so patient and waiting for this video. I thank you for watching this video. I hope you all have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'm going to see all of you guys in the next video. Don't forget to check me out on all my other social medias. And yes, feel free to leave a comment down below if you would like to continue the conversation. I am fully open to conversation as always. And definitely give the video a like. It really helps out the channel. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're over 100 subs, and now we're on our goal. We're on our way to getting that 1,000 subs. 1,000 subs. Here we come. Yeah, I just gotta keep putting videos. I gotta keep putting videos out in a timely manner, though. But enough of that. I'm gonna see you guys in the next video. Bye.